I think that's the problem is that we need more people. We need more staff. We need, I mean, that's the struggle because if you ask for an
Mhm.
aide in the public school system, it is pulling
Well, and
teeth.
I think when you say that, I need a one-on-one aid for her. She needs a one-on-one aid so that she can be independent in the classroom. I feel like when certain people hear that in these meetings, they think we're employing another person. These are benefits. This is, like, what's my budget? How do I do this? Whereas if you go in and you say, okay, these are the things that she needs. She needs somebody to be near her, to communicate with her, and to maintain, like, hold her attention because this is happening over there. And she's still learning how to pay attention to what's happening over there. So she's going to need somebody close to her that reminds her that's your teacher that is giving you the directions. She's also asking you to do something right now. Let's get you to do that. And then also, she might be asking you to answer a question, and maybe you need some help with your device to answer this question. And, everybody's like, yeah, she's going to need all that. She is. And then as a parent, you can say, okay, how do we support her in that? And
Yeah.
kind of when you backdoor that a little bit, then they're like, oh, we're going to need somebody with her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I
And
think
that is a different conversation.
And I think too, I mean, that's a good point because I had tried to get Stella a one-on-one aid, and that was a very like, nope, not happening kind of thing. Um, but as she's been in school, they've started to not give her a one-on-one aid, but they've started to give her that assistant. So, for instance, she started school last week and she had an incident in the bathroom because she was in there by herself and she shouldn't have been, but that was not part of our IEP. It was not thought of or whatever. But they realized, okay, Stella needs somebody to help her go to the bathroom, just to help make sure that she does what she needs to do and
Hmm.
follows the process. So, and the same thing with like her end of day, packing her backpack, and, helping her participate in circle time or, answer questions like you said. So she doesn't have a one on one aid, but what they've done, because we set what she needs, is they've made sure somebody is in there. So her speech therapist comes in and works with her at this time, circle time. She's working in the classroom to help her use her device to answer questions about the story or whatever they're doing. Her resource teacher is in the classroom to help her when they're doing certain projects, or she's got somebody going into special areas with her to make sure that she participates in the special area. So she doesn't have a one-on-one aid, but because we listed the things that she needs help with, they got her the help that they needed. So I
Yeah.
think I think that was a really important lesson really that I really just picked up on yesterday is, it's not I guess sometimes you have to be careful about the wording, list the things that she needs help with and it's up to them to figure out how they're going to get it.
Hmm.
Doesn't have to be a one-on-one aid, because she doesn't need someone in there, the whole time. But let's make a list of when she is going to need help, and then okay, it's your job now to figure out how to get
Hmm.
that versus
Hmm.
going into a meeting and say, look, we want a one-on-one aid. This is what we need. This is what we want. I feel like that's a better approach. It seemed to have worked for us. So
Hmm. Yeah. And I think it is the language. It's so that is the big story about a lot of requests that you're making too as a parent is, walking in. It's important to be pretty clear and concise. Like, these are the things she's going to need that I can tell you she's going to need. I don't know what a typical school day looks like for you. So if she needs these things, I'm going to need you to tell me what she's going to need at school. And but being pretty clear, I have expectations that she's going to have the regular classroom schedule with everybody else. So where does she need the help? versus, yes, it's true, she's going to need somebody with her a lot. That's true. But if you lead off with that, you're going to get a no every time. And
Yeah.
then the battle becomes, okay, tell me why no. Well, we also can't tell you why yes. So then that's also hard. But if you just have the conversation differently, then maybe you have I don't want to say a better chance of getting what you need, because you should get what you need in general, but it's a lot less contentious if it's presented, here are her needs. How can you meet these needs? She has to be safe at school. She has to be learning at school. So, in order to keep her safe and in order to keep her learning, she's probably going to need a grown up a lot of times.
And I think that was a huge thing going into an IEP, that I think that a lot of parents, just from talking to parents, don't realize, because I mean, how can you? It's so overwhelming. How can you
Mhm.
possibly know it all? But was going into her first IEP meeting with a list of supports that I knew she needed. And no, we're not going to know everything until she's in the classroom, but knowing, at the beginning when she started in kindergarten, that she was not completely potty trained, that she was going to need to be changed. She was going to need to be taken to the bathroom regularly. Knowing that she couldn't write yet. So we were going to have different kinds of supports for her in that regard. Her communication device, like having a list of things that that she needs help with going in there is a huge thing. So okay, she needs help with this is something she can do, she just needs little assistance. How can we make this work in the
Mhm.
general education environment? I think.
And knowing the best way to be proactive as a parent, that's a really good point. You could be proactive by saying, give me a one-on-one aid, maybe true. Or you could be proactive in, these are the things that work for us. These are the things that work for her. Let's do this. And then you know what? Maybe we figure out 3 weeks into school, she's kind of, the morning routine is pretty okay. She's with it in the morning. She's paying attention. She's fresh. So she can hang up her backpack. She can go get the whatever she needs to get and go to her desk. And maybe we don't need all that support in the morning. But by the end of the day, when she's tired and maybe a little frazzled from the whole day of school, she needs somebody to walk her through and say, these are the things you put in your backpack. Now you have to stand and wait until they call your bus number, your mom's number, your whatever. And then you got to go. Maybe that's where the support needs to be. But just because we don't know where that support has to be from day one doesn't mean she shouldn't get that option
Yeah.
to try to do it, which I think is, that also gets lost sometimes, is like, some parents see that as like, oh, you're just waiting for them to fail. We have to fail in order to get services. Things have to not work out in order to make this happen. And in some ways, you have to demonstrate a deficit. So is that failing? Maybe that's semantics, but you have to demonstrate a deficit. But then in also some ways, why can't we just provide some support in some areas and see if that's right, and all be reasonable to say, let's do this for 8 weeks. Let's do this for the end of the school year. We're going to make a plan. We'll see. This is different for everybody. We'll get to the end of the school year, and then maybe we've got a really good idea about what she's going to need moving forward. And school looks different now. It's going to look different in the fall probably. So just knowing that it's okay for all of us to come in and be like, we're hoping for the best here and we're putting the best plan we got, but we're also not guaranteeing this solves all the problems. And I feel like some parents come to the table and they expect the school to be like, okay, here's your individualized plan that is individualized to your kid, that isn't a one size fits all for the special ed Down syndrome kids. But they don't have that because it is individualized. And then schools also are like, oh, you don't work here, so you don't get to tell us how to do our job. And then you end up in that like stalemate at a table where people are just like, well, then this is what we do for these kids. So, and being able to have that conversation of like, let's do this, let's try this, and let's all be willing to come back here if it doesn't work. It's nobody's fault if it doesn't work. And let's all come back here if it works really well, and maybe we don't need all of this. But just knowing we're not predicting the future for 12 months. We can predict the future for 4 weeks, for 8 weeks, for the grading period, and then circle back and have another conversation. Is this working? What do we need to change? But I think sometimes schools are like, we can't, there's no way we can commit to this person or this one-on-one aid or the whatever, because, second semester, we usually have this thing going on and that person does this. Okay, well then let's do this right now and see if it's necessary. Let's cross that bridge second semester when we get there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's such a focus, time is of the essence. So I get, we have to meet once a year. We're going to meet and make sure that, we have this plan and we're all really good at our jobs. So we know where she's going to be in 12 months, when it's totally okay to say, whoa, I thought, especially now coming back to school after being out for a year, I thought this was going to be good. It seems like maybe it's not quite.
Yeah.
And just knowing as a parent, you can ask for that meeting, and then recognizing as a school system that nobody did anything wrong. We're just circling back to readjust this thing because it's a fluid document. It's an individualized plan. So we can continue to individualize it as we go. And that's okay. Nobody has to get defensive.
I can't tell you how many times we had to meet last year to readjust her plan, because it was her first year in full day, kindergarten at the public school system. And no one knew what it was going to look like because she had never done that. So, we started off with one plan, and we just had to continue to adjust. And then, a lot of things happened throughout the year, like her having to switch classrooms and things where we had to, come back and readjust and then figure out some behaviors and do a functional behavior assessment, and then figure out, okay, this is what's triggering her behaviors. Let's figure out how to adjust that. And doing that was everything. It changed everything. Before COVID hit, she was finally making that progress. And now when we went back this year, I had been implementing her structured work systems and everything from home. I was fortunate enough to be home with her to do that. So when she went back to school, they had that plan in place, and it's gone so smoothly, definitely better than I anticipated after being all
good.
But it took so much trial and error. And the thing is that she's always going to be changing. And then, I'm sure it's not just Stella, but a lot of kids, they change what works for them, like maybe her reward system that they're using right now works great. But in 2 months, she might decide, oh, I'm not going to work for that anymore. So we have to readjust. And, having a supportive team who recognizes that and is willing to, adjust that is so important. And knowing that as a parent, that's okay, that was working and it's not, it doesn't mean that she's failing. It doesn't mean that the inclusion's not working. It means that we just have to change things up, and we're going to constantly have to change things up as she grows.
Her interests change. That's, it's funny because I'm sure for your other kids, like, oh, they used to watch this all the time and now they don't. And nobody bats an eye at that. Like, oh, you're just not interested in that anymore. Wow, you ate broccoli 2 weeks ago and you don't eat it now. Huh. Okay, I guess we don't eat broccoli anymore. Like, nobody bats an eye. But then sometimes when things seem to be so micromanaged, like, no, but she really likes this. So, well, she'll like this. Like, yeah, but maybe she doesn't anymore. And maybe she got it too much that it's not meaningful anymore. And, it is totally okay to have to come back and say, okay, we had a good plan. It was working. Now it's working a little less effectively. So let's figure out a way to get back to where we were. Or we thought this was going to work and it didn't. It's okay. It's nobody's fault. And I feel like that's also another point of contention in meetings too, is like, School wants you to come in because we got a problem. And in order to identify the problem, we got to talk about how this happened. Or as a parent, you ask for a meeting and you're like, this isn't working, and it's not working because you're not holding up your end of the bargain, school, or you're not doing it the way we talked about. And if you go in there and you're pointing fingers, then everybody, you're not solving the problem, you're just defending yourself. These are the people that we have in our classroom. This is the best that we can do. The aide was out with strep throat, so she wasn't there, and there wasn't anybody else who could be there. Okay. If you're communicating, you probably know that. So, it's really important to keep those lines of communication open. But also, it's not that anybody needs to be defending themselves. It's just like, hey, I noticed that you're sending a whole lot more notes home right now than you were before. That's okay, but we just need to figure out why. Oh,
Right.
well, because she started doing this weird behavior that's disruptive. Oh, okay. There's a solution for that. I mean, I'm so proud that you guys got an FBA, because I feel like that's also something where you walk in and they're like, no, 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 we've got a reward system, we have a behavior chart, we have a blah, blah, blah. And so we don't need to do that. And
I will say that I've been blessed with an incredible team. And I think that it didn't start out that way. Our IEP started out very, very rough, but I think that we did have a little bit of change in leadership. But I think that also they recognized that I knew what I wanted and that I wasn't backing down. And so, okay, we're going to try this. They finally decided, I remember last year, okay, we want this to work. We want to use Stella as an inclusive model for the future. So we want to make this work. But it wasn't initial, like that took time to get to that point. And now I think we've, created this amazing team, and they really, really go above and beyond to make it work, and adjust things accordingly. Like, with the FBA, because I know a lot of parents have had a hard time getting that. And I will say we've been blessed with that, but I'll also have not backed down from, and they know that. So, okay, this is going to happen regardless. So we better make it work.
yes, we can sit here and talk about it for 3 hours, or we can just say, yes, we'll try that now.
Yeah.
Like, in the end, we're going to end up doing it. And I think also, as a parent, you set the precedent for, I'm not being unrealistic. And I'm not saying that I want you to do 17 things when really I need 5. If you're showing up, you're being realistic and you're being reasonable, and you set the precedent that you have expectations of A, progress, and B, success, then it's their job to figure out, okay, so how do we make the progress here? If that's maintaining is not the goal, and just going to school and having a good time is not the goal, we're actually expecting progress on these goals. And if you set that precedent in the beginning, then that kind of just pushes them forward each time. Like, oh, okay, well, she's asking for this again because she wants progress and success, which is what everybody's goal is,
Well, and
not to be a big pain.
I think that's so important. Somebody told me, when we first started IEPs, to go in and tell them what we wanted and expected for our daughter. And I went in with like a mission statement, and I did for the first several IEPs, and talked about what I wanted, not just for education, but for her future. And that, I wanted her to graduate high school with a diploma, that I wanted her, if she wanted to go to college, to go to college. I wanted her to learn to live on her own if that was possible. Like, we can't predict any of our kids' futures, but these are the goals that I have for her, just like any other child. So let's treat her like that. And, kind of that vision statement for what I wanted for her was important, I think, to let them know that. And Also, like I mentioned earlier about, when she goes to get a job, if some of the people that are hiring grew up with kids with Down syndrome, they're more likely to hire someone like her, and how important that is. And, starting young, the inclusion, so that we have acceptance and kindness and, all of those things. And I always reiterate that in our IEP meetings. And I think that has been helpful so that, because I think sometimes, their job is hard. Like all of the people involved in their IEPs, I don't know how. I mean, we had a 2.5 hour IEP. I don't know how they do this all the time. um, and I think it's easy probably for them to lose sight of each individual as an individual. It can become almost like another number. And so when you
Mhm.
put, I always, the first IEP meetings, I always brought her picture, before everybody knew who she was, showed her picture, told about, the things that she liked, enjoyed. I want them to see her as a person and to presume competence. And I think that's important in those IEP meetings because they can get so
Mhm.
lost on, okay, there's another IEP. Let's check off the boxes and move on.
Yep.
And I don't think it's not because they're heartless. It's because, it's just, it
Well,
becomes,
they have a lot to do, and in some ways that is how the meeting goes. Like, we do need to make sure we check all these boxes, everything's proceeding as normal, parents, you're okay, teachers, you're okay, we're done, we move on. And then I think that they've gotten really used to, and it's not just your district, it's lots of districts, probably all of them in this area have gotten really used to, we're presenting you as the parent, we're, as the district, we're presenting you with a plan. You're going to say okay because we're the ones in charge of making the plan and executing it, and you're going to be happy with it, and your job is to be happy with what we're doing. And that's kind of been the system that has been created, and that's been the system that has worked pretty well. And I think I've seen it happen enough where even when parents are like, this doesn't work, my kid's coming home, we're doing 4 hours of homework every night, and that's because they're not learning it at school. Well, then the curriculum's not modified. Like, that's maybe you need an evaluation so that the curriculum can be modified, or you need accommodation so that somebody can write your kids work for them. Do you want them to write everything, or do you want to know if they know the information? Like, being able to have that perspective as a parent and as a district, like, our whole goal is the progress and the success, and not you just need to be happy with what we're doing. And I think that's kind of how I've arrived to where I am now, is just that there is a special education process, and it comes down from the federal regulations from IDEA that goes to your state, and our state's pretty much like, yeah, do this, and if you want to do anything above the bare minimum, farm that out to the local districts. So then it's kind of up to your district, but your district is, they're presenting the process to you, they are their own checks and balances whether or not they're doing it. So now you are the enforcer of the process. You are the checks and balances in the process without ever knowing what the process is. And that doesn't work.
yeah,
They have a process, and you're like, okay, well, my neighbor said this is kind of what happened. So, this must be the way it goes. They must just present this, and I say okay. And, in the end, she loves going to school. They all smile at her. She comes home and she's happy. That's great. But she also needs to be learning.
yeah,
And that, we can't lose sight of that. But I think that as long as everybody's getting along, then this process can just continue. And as a parent, when you're the one who's supposed to be the checks and balances, and you don't even know maybe that you should have an evaluation every 3 years, you don't even know that you age out of developmental delay at 9 years old. Like, when she's 8, you need to be having a meeting to find a new eligibility category. And if you don't know that because you haven't done reading, because you don't know that there's reading to do, There isn't anybody that sits down with you and says, okay, your kid's in special ed. Here's the process. We do this every 3 years. We go through all of this. We're going to meet every year. We can meet anytime in between that. We can adjust these goals and we're going to give you progress. And you can come to us with any concerns and we can do this. And I think that if that was the conversation, this whole thing would look so different.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not. So you go into the system with your sweet little kid. You have to trust them because you're giving your kid to them for the, half day, full day, 5 days a week, one day. But you have to trust them. So of course they're identifying what's going to be the best route to get to success, and they're teaching your child and they know what they're doing. And I think that they really just hold on to that sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're stuck having to do all this reading at midnight, at 1 a.m, trying to figure out, what does this mean? They said developmental delay and aging out. And like, are you aging out of special education? What does that mean? Are you aging out of, this teacher? What does that mean? And
yeah, it's so overwhelming for parents. And, there's so much. And parents who have other kids and work and I talk to parents all the time about it. Like, I don't know what to do, tell me what to do. And, it's a struggle. And I've talked to so many parents who didn't even realize that there were any other options but what they put in front of them. And I get it, because it is overwhelming. I think that, the Down syndrome community is very fortunate here locally, because we have an amazing organization that helps educate us on some of that. But then there's so many other, and if you're not involved in that organization, then you don't know. And then there's so many other kids, with different, disabilities that don't have that community, and they just don't.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's so much.
It is. And there's, to a certain extent, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
And you don't want to walk, there's a lot of going on. you don't want to walk into a meeting and be the one that's like, what's going on here, folks? Why are we meeting here? I'm a little, I don't know what's going on here. Mm-hmm. So you're not going to do that, but you're probably walking into a meeting, most likely, unless you've asked for paperwork ahead of time, because you can do that. You're walking into a meeting literally empty-handed, except maybe your coffee or your water bottle. You're sitting at this meeting with 7 other people, 10 other people, depends on where your kid is and how things have been going. And they have all seen this document. They have all worked on this document. And they all know what's going on. And you walk in as the parent of the child that you're meeting about. And of course you don't walk in and be like, why are we here? What are we doing? What did you guys do here? You walk in and you're like, okay, I'm ready for this. But really you're like, I don't know what I'm ready for. What am I doing? And just, thinking, and the analogy I use, for parents is like, where it's not even an analogy, it's a question. Where else do you go where everybody has seen the documentation and the plan and you have not, and you agree to it?
Mm-hmm.
You don't go would you go buy a car like that? No. Would you buy a house like that? No. Would you send your kid to college like that? No.
Right.
Would you buy a mattress like that?
But you don't even, but parents don't even recognize that they can ask for, an IEP draft, unless somebody tells them, and the school system's not going to tell you. And not that they're trying to necessarily keep anything from you, but that's not their job to tell you to ask for that. So, parents know that. I remember the first time I asked for an IEP draft, and I looked at the psychologist notes and I'm like, no, this is not right. This is not right. And I had to highlight all the things that we needed to adjust. But had I not known to ask for that, then it would have been so, when you're in the meeting, it's so overwhelming that,
Mhm.
difficult.
And just knowing it's okay to ask, and you don't need it 3 weeks in advance. You're asking them to have it done on Friday for a Monday meeting.
Right.
You're asking to have it done at the beginning of the week so that you can have it for your Wednesday meeting. Like, I just want a chance to look over it. And I've been an OT in schools, and so I totally understand that 30 minutes before that meeting, there is somebody scrambling to put something in there. But all right, that's one or two things.
Right.
If we can identify the goals, and if we already have a good system going and good communication, we're probably all on the same page anyway. But it is maintaining that communication so that you know what to expect when you go there. And you know you've been getting the goal progress, so you're like, all right, I know that they've met the math goal because I've seen the math work, so I expect we're going to up the expectation here.